Welcome back to our Sunday Wisdom sessions. In the previous session, we spoke about a very inspiring quality of shuchihi, to be pure, where we are constantly looking for ways that we can improve, looking for impurities in our personality, looking for defects, for defaults, and trying, starting from outside, working our way in to be purer, better, and the absolute being the state of self-realization, the absolute perfection. This quality that we're going to study today, it's very practical. And there's a reason why it has such an external application that all of us can benefit from. The quality is called Daksha. And if you look at the translation of Daksha, it's not easy to define. So Daksha means dexterous, skillful, smart. And when you look at the synonyms, dexterous, skillful, smart, what is this quality doing in a list of qualities about a seeker of truth, a devotee of God? And the reason why it's there, because our association, when we think about a spiritual person, or when we think about somebody who is seeking God, truth, we think of somebody who's a philosopher. So they're very useful in theological discussions when we're talking about higher elevated living. But when it comes down to actually functioning in the world, being productive, and for those of you who remember how we finished in the last session that we had together, Dana asked a question about how do I apply this subject in my day-to-day living? How do I bring these great spiritual elevated teachings in my day-to-day work, in my day-to-day life? This quality says that a spiritual person has a very strong gross intellect as well as subtle intellect. Now, we've spoken about the intellect in general. So for those of you who want to recap, how would you define intellect?
Our mental capacity to judge and discriminate.
To judge and discriminate? Okay. Anyone else?
Reasoning.
Reasoning?
It's our control center.
It's our control center. All of these are spot on. The idea of the intellect is this control center, this faculty of reasoning and thinking. Now we go into it next layer of detail. The intellect is further divided into two aspects. One is the gross intellect, and the other is the subtle intellect. They have the same functions. So they deal with reasoning, they deal with discrimination. But the gross intellect is that part of the intellect which deals with the world. So it's your ability to reason in the world, apply yourself in day-to-day function in terms of navigating a tricky situation, having a conversation with a colleague, relating with a difficult family member. This requires the application of the gross intellect. Now, when does it switch over to the subtle intellect? The subtle intellect is when we start thinking about what's beyond the world. How did this all begin? What is the truth of this life? What started all this? Where does my thinking happen? Where do thoughts come from? So the moment we go beyond the world, beyond what we know, this is the subtle intellect, but we're still using reasoning and thinking. In most of these qualities, there's always an element of subtle intellect. But here, We're talking about a gross intellect being used in the world to be skillful, prompt, smart. The connection is this. When, and if you could picture a person doing this, when a person goes to a temple, church, a mosque, and if you're going to the temple, sometimes you offer a fruit or you offer some flowers. Does anyone notice or recall what kind of flowers do you pick? What kind of fruit do you pick? What is the exercise that you go through before you present it? Even if you're making something, sometimes a person prepares a meal and then offers it to God, as it were. What is your observation?
The best of it.
You choose the best of it. You choose the best. It could be gulab jamun, which is a sweet in India. It could be the best flour. It could be the best fruit. So if you find a spot on the fruit, you don't offer it to God. Interesting. So you're offering only what is the best to that higher entity. Not that it's going to be eaten, not that God has anything to do with fruits and flowers and food, but it's that feeling that I'm offering it to the highest, therefore it should be the best. But not only that, what about your dress? We find in different cultures and different religions, before you pray or before you worship, people take a bath. In fact, outside traditional temples, there would be these huge public bathing facilities where you'd go, you'd have a dip, and then you're ready, you're clean to enter the temple. I remember being brought up in a Catholic school, so for some of the Sunday services, they would call it wearing your Sunday best. Who are you dressing up for? And no doubt, some people definitely dress up because there's a good chance you may meet someone attractive. But ideally, you're dressing up for God. You're wearing your best, not because it's an occasion where you're going to meet presidents and prime ministers, but you're presenting yourself to God. So you should be well dressed. Now, if this concept of God is something that is not clear to us, what about somebody that we respect, that we honor? How would we receive that person in our home? How would we behave? How would we offer or host that person? So no doubt, we'll be well presented. Punctual, definitely. Clean, no doubt. And whatever we put forward, whether it's a meal or whether it's our home, suddenly we find ourselves tidying up and neatening things and putting things away and straightening portraits and vacuuming the carpet. Why? Because you want to present the best version of yourself to this honorable person, to this very important guest. In the Indian scriptures, people would live like this, with this quality of being smart, with being skillful, doing everything with a grace, Daksha, because you never know when God is going to appear. So suddenly you are sitting with the cobbler who's repairing your shoe, and that cobbler turns into God, Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva. Or you're walking down and you're interacting with the shopkeeper. Now you can't get into an argument with the shopkeeper. Why? Because it could be God testing you. And the idea is, the way you conduct yourself is because God is watching. So what happens even if you're not going to the church? How should you keep your physical personality? God is watching. There's a scene from the play A Man for All Seasons by Robert Bolt. And there's a dialogue that goes on between Sir Thomas More and Richard Rich. And Richard Rich is this young, aspiring person who wants to be in politics. Sir Thomas More is also very high up. He's the king's right-hand person. And Richard Rich is looking for a placement. He wants to work with Sir Thomas More. And Sir Thomas More can see his temptation for power. And he assesses Richard Rich. And this is the dialogue here. So I'll put it up on the screen so you can follow. He says to Richard, why not be a teacher? You'd be a fine teacher, perhaps a great one. And look at Richard's reply. If I was, who would know it? Like, what is the point of being a teacher if nobody knows it? I'm not famous, I'm not important, I'm not influential. And Sir Thomas More says this, you, your pupils, your friends, God. Not a bad public that. Now we are choosing the best of things when we go to worship. We are presenting ourselves to the best of our ability when we go for a service. How can we bring this quality and feeling into everything that we do? Maybe it's easier when we understand the opposite. So one way of understanding a concept is by looking at its opposite. So what would the opposite of Daksha be? Yes, Paresh.
Clumsy and unrefined.
Unrefined. Okay.
Clumsy.
Sorry?
Clumsiness.
Can you repeat, please? Mike?
Clumsiness.
Clumsiness, right? There's no care. There is no grace. There is no consideration. It's not thought out. It's not skillful.
Carelessness.
Carelessness. Just heedless, indifferent. So imagine, and this is the idea. So for those of you who've seen people offering a flower or a fruit to God, what is the feeling that you do it with? There's a reverence, there's a gentility, there's a softness about it when you're doing it. It's beautiful. Now, what's the opposite of this? You chuck it. Imagine chucking the flower at God, chucking the fruit. It's unrefined, it's uncouth. But now what I'm saying is bring it to a mundane activity. What if we saw how we bring up our children as worship? What if we saw how we do our work, how we do the dishes, how we get ready for bed? How if we saw each of those activities as worship? Talking to our spouse. Say, this could be God right here in disguise. Very well disguised, but no doubt could be. So how would I conduct myself if my spouse was God or this activity was taking me to God? There would be a gentleness. There would be a grace in the way you do it. And this is Daksha. There's a story of the Count of Monte Cristo. And it's from Victor Hugo's novel, this character. And the Count meets a young Parisian. And this young, noble man from Paris, he meets the Count and he's enamored. He says, Count, please, why don't you come to our home in Paris, our manor, and grace us. And the Count of Monte Cristo says, okay, what is the date today? He says it's the 13th of July, 7:15 p.m. Paris time. He says, okay, I will meet you 1 year from today at your home at the hour. And the young boy, he thinks the Count is joking, but so particular, so exact. So he was curious, and he prepared himself in case the Count came. And he called his friends to meet this mysterious Count. And they waited. 1 year later, to the dot, 13th of July, 7:10 p.m. 5 minutes to go. There is no sign of the Count, no carriage. And remember, there was no airlines back then. No helicopters, no jets. And he waits. He said 7:15 p.m. to the minute. And his friends are looking, they're looking at the front gate, they're looking further ahead, see no sign of a carriage. And at 7:14 p.m., racing down the streets, through the front gates, and arriving at the doorstep, 7:15 p.m., the Count gets out. And he had been traveling through 3 countries. And he makes it there at 7:15 p.m. And of course, all the Parisians, this young nobleman, as well as all his friends, they're so impressed. Oh, Count, I can't believe you came on time. You said 1 year. Nobody does that. And the Count replies, punctuality is the politeness of kings. Punctuality is the politeness of kings. And that's it. Now, how do we interact with the world? When we are punctual, it is not so much for the other person. It is for the person you want to be and the way that you see your behavior. If you see it as part of your offering to God, offering to something higher, offering to self-realization, you're a king. And as a king, you give that consideration to other kings. That's what you're offering to. Michelangelo, the great painter, he was commissioned to paint different aspects of the Lord's life in the Sistine Chapel. And he said, no, I would like to do something more ambitious than painting the 12 apostles. And he had some ideas. And no doubt he started the job because he was commissioned, but he went much further. And of course, what he's created, we've all heard about it. Some of you may have had the privilege of going to see it. But for those of you who've been to the Sistine Chapel, if you look out and you look at the domes and you see these wonderful paintings, you cannot actually appreciate the detail that has gone by, the detail that has gone into it, the time, the effort that has warranted that particular job. So what Michelangelo did was far, far more than what was commissioned. And that kind of detail wasn't necessary when nobody could go up there and inspect it. So why? Why do you do something so well?
An expression of yourself, expression of love.
Expression of yourself, expression of love.
He
An
did
offering
it
to
for
God.
God.
Mhm.
He did for
Sorry, come on.
God. He did for God. For
You're doing it
God.
for God. You're doing it to find God. You're doing it as an offering to God.
Respect of yourself.
Respect of yourself.
That is his nature.
It's his nature. That's a beautiful way to put it. It's if I do something, this is how I do it. So if I decide to do something, and this is where the gross intellect comes in, I'm going to do it well. And this is the difference between operating on the mind, where you do things mechanically, you do things ritualistically, but you don't do it with intention. You don't do it with meaning. You don't do it with grace. You just do it for the sake of doing it. Everybody else is doing it. I'm doing it. I got stuck in this particular situation, so I'm just going to while away my time. No. This is taking ownership of that particular activity, intending to do something with purpose and giving it the highest purpose, even if it's the lowest job, and making that job spiritual, beautiful, an act that takes you to the ultimate. That is Daksha. And he says, Michelangelo, many believe, and I believe, that I have been designated for this work by God. So people are saying, you're so talented. God's given you this gift. And he says, in spite of my old age, I do not want to give it up. I work out of love for God, and I put all my hope in him. Whatever is your concept. And this is the change. So when we go to Dana's question about how do we apply this every day, it's by understanding and aligning how every activity that we do is taking us closer to evolution, is taking us closer to self-realization. And in a devotional way, is helping us get closer to God. We're offering this to God. So instead of offering fruits and flowers and food, we're offering our actions. There's one poem that we studied, The Village Preacher. And this is a poem that our teacher, Swami Parthasarathi, he was brought up with. And he depicts this setting in his home, growing up as a child, where his father would read out lines of literature. So it could be from The Turkey and the Ant, about criticizing another person. He says, "Oh, you remark another sin, bid thy own conscience look within." So he says, before you criticize another, look at your own conscience. Control thy more voracious bill, nor for a breakfast nations kill. Means look at what you're doing first. So if somebody was giving a lecture or grumbling about another person, the father would say this. And one of the other lines that he would say, which is fits in our context here, he says, but in his duty, talking about the village preacher, but in his duty prompted every call. Now imagine growing up, two young sons, and the doorbell rings, and everybody in the house would go, but prompt in his duty at every call, and they would race to go and open the door. Or the telephone rings, they would race to go and pick up the telephone. Why? But prompt in his duty at every call. It's my duty. So there's a looking forward to it. There's an enthusiasm. Now, I don't know about your household, but definitely in some of our households that we've been in or been brought up in, if the bell rings, people are acting as if they didn't hear it. If the telephone rings, nobody's picking it up. Or your turn, Your turn. No, I got it last time. No, your turn. But in his duty, prompt at every call. What a way of bringing up children, where you make doing your duty something to look forward to, something to jump up at, rather than to recoil from. You're making it a game. You're making it something that you look forward to. And this is what we would like to bring into our own lives. But in order to do that, it needs an alignment of how that activity fits into our life and how that activity is actually taking us towards our evolution and ultimately self-realization. All it is thought. I'm dedicating this to God. I'm dedicating this to the self. So I thought, to summarize this discussion that we're having of Daksha, how can we put it into practice? And one way of looking at these qualities is to go through the different levels of our personality. So if we start externally, so Daksha, the first aspect, which is appearance. Is our appearance smart? So externally, are we well groomed? Are we putting in the effort to present ourselves? Then we look at the next level, which is action. So in action, are we considerate, skillful, expert? And this is where we're saying, usually we think of a spiritual person that they're not so good in worldly matters. Not at all. If you're doing something, do it well. Practice it. Think about it. Apply it. Execute it well. It could be a game of tennis because you're applying yourself in that activity. You're present. It is not an activity just for time pass. If I'm going to do it, I do it well. Swamiji would give as an example of Daksha. And these are all things that we've picked up as part of our mentorship. He would call us when we were traveling together and he says, do you know how to pack a bag? What do you mean pack a bag? Do you know how to pack a suitcase? I said, yeah, of course, Swamiji. Like, look, here's the suitcase, we packed it. And then he said, that's not how you pack a suitcase. And the interesting part is he unpacked his whole suitcase to show us how to pack it properly. And he would use every inch of the suitcase. So there would be no extra space. So whether it be a sock or a pouch or a towel or a shirt, so it would be put in a particular way that every layer by layer, it was completely well utilized. That's how you pack a suitcase. But the same thing when you're packing your car trunk, when you're putting bags in, how do you pack it? Have you used the space properly? And each of these can become a skill, the way you organize your equipment in the kitchen. So we've got countless activities to be spiritual, to make work our worship. We just have to apply ourselves. But we don't look at it like that. We give activities a hierarchy. And no doubt some activities are important in the sense they provide for our sustenance, they earn our income. Yes. But in terms of activity that help you evolve, every activity is important behind it. And if the thought on behind it is deliberate, conscious, well-directed, And towards your evolution, it is doing the same role as studying the Upanishads, as studying Vedanta treaties, is doing the same role. So what? So even cleaning your shoes, tying your shoelaces can be as spiritual an activity, yes, as going to a place of worship. You could be in a place of worship and not have a higher thought. Vice versa also. At the emotional level, what is Daksha? At the emotional level, it is doing an activity with, as we mentioned, grace, reverence, respect. I remember there was a senior alumnus. She had done the course maybe 10 years before me, and she had come to visit the academy when I was doing the course. And at that time, my duty was to do the AV setup. So I would have to go and put the mic on Swamiji. I would have to set up the speakers, etc. Do the recording. And she would get so tickled and she would admire. She would just stare, gaze, and she shared afterwards why. She would watch me come and put the microphone on Swamiji. And I said, what a curious thing to notice. And she said, no, the way you do it, there is so much of love, there's so much of gentleness, there's so much of respect. What? Just taking the kurta, putting a little bit up, but the way it was done, she says, it just made me admire. Now, she didn't say that about my other activities. She said that about the one activity. She definitely did not say that about my football. But in this one aspect, because it was a person that I admire, that I look up to, how to cause the minimum discomfort, how to do it as expertly as possible, no extra time, but with care, get the right position, angle it. I remember one simple example of just this consideration is when you bring a cup of tea to somebody and you place the teacup down. So what would be Daksha? Or if you were presenting it to God or someone that you care about, that you honor. Simple thing. Turn the handle to face the person. What thought? Now, for some, it might seem, of course, obvious, but just that thought, face the handle to the person. So it's easy for them to pick it up. It's not on the other side. Seems so simple. But these are the simple things that go into this quality. And the last aspect of Daksha is thought. It is doing the research. Just as if you were to meet a very important person, you would do the research to interact with that person, to ensure that it goes smoothly, that it goes well, that it's well executed. Same thing with this quality. Whatever you choose to do, has it been well thought out before you execute? Has it been researched? Is this the best way of doing it? Is this the most efficient way? So look at how many ways we can take simple activities, conversations, interactions, and use them for evolution. And all of them have the same thinking behind it. So this is Daksha. So as a summary, appearance, physical appearance, you're smart. But also smart in whatever you do. Whether you pack, present a meal, you display a plate, present a plate of food, action, you're considerate, you're skillful, you're expert, emotion, graceful, respectful, reverential, thought, deliberate, present, and this is an important, well-researched. So present and well-researched. I want to just spend a moment on being present. Here are a couple of questions we can ask ourselves. Am I busy or am I productive? Is my action thoughtful or is it mechanical? And does the action align with my inner subtle intellect, with my conscience? If you have this alignment, if you have this thoughtfulness, which means being present in the action, applying yourself in that activity, you're not just doing action for the sake of action. You're not just occupying time, but you're using the action as evolution. Step. This is the difference between being busy and being dexterous. Daksha. What a quality. Practical. And the next few qualities are going to be like this: untroubled, unconcerned. So very relevant qualities for each of us. Now, the latter part of the session, we're going to take up some questions. So please keep in mind any questions you've had from the session. We've also for those of you who watched earlier this week, we had the Guru Purnima lecture by Swamiji, where he spoke on 3 yogas meditation. So if you have questions from that, please bring it up. And before we get on to that, the question for the week. And it is this: what is the significance of prayer, rituals, and idols? So this is usually an aspect of Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion. Let's delve into it. Prayer. Prayer has become beggary. The only time most people pray, wherever it is in different cultures, we pray because the person wants something. They want maybe the business to do well. They want a family member to recover from an illness. But if you look at all these activities, we look at prayer as asking favors from providence, from divinity, from God. Give me a favor. But why? Why should divinity suddenly, without any cause and effect relationship, give you just because you ask? And when we do this, where is the focus? Where is the accent? It is on my body, my mind, my intellect. That is the ego. So all prayer, if it is like this, where we go and we ask for favors from the higher, all it's doing is increasing our selfishness, our ego. But prayer, in essence, should be a dissolution of the ego, a dissolution of selfishness. This is true prayer. So when you go to a place of worship, temple, church, mosque, synagogue, are you praying, P-R-E-Y, praying, trying to get more? Or are you really praying, P-R-A-Y? What is prayer then? And Swamiji has a beautiful phrasing of it. He says, prayer is not a part-time pastime. Something you do once a week, something you do on Mondays or Wednesdays or Thursdays. It is a full-time awareness of truth. That's it. It is the constant remembrance of God. It's the constant remembrance of truth, reality. To the extent you can keep that in the background of all your activities, the idea that truth is my compass, my goal, the reason for every activity that I do, then you are practicing prayer. But having said that, it is not easy to think about the truth all the time, or at least the hours that we're conscious. So we can use actual prayers in the sense food prayer, morning prayer, the Lord's Prayer, or mantras. There's the Gayatri mantra that people say at sunrise, sunset. The food prayer we say before different meals. We say an invocation before we study the Bhagavad Gita or a scripture. So these invocations, these prayers, what is the significance? Why do we do this? So even if you come to the academy, if you visit, it is predominantly an intellectual place where we delve into the philosophy. But there are, through the day, a handful of prayers, maybe about 3 or 4 prayers that we do. There's a morning prayer when you wake up. Why? Because these are reminders to either get us into the mood or to help us assert why we're doing what we're doing. So they're just little reminders to get our thoughts in that direction. So we could use prayer to increase or remind us to think about the higher. So food prayer, this food that I'm eating is God. The body that is receiving is God. So when you get into an activity, even though it's an essential activity, where are your thoughts going? It's going to God. So you're using prayer as a reminder. So this is its significance. What about rituals and idols? Rituals have played a very important part because they have maintained religion. How? Religion has 2 parts in it. One is the non-essentials, one is the essentials. When I say the non-essentials, it is the wrapper, as it were. It is the covering of the deeper imports of the religion. And this wrapper, this covering is important, but it has no meaning unless we unravel it and we actually have what's inside. And what's inside those rituals, those wrappings, those different activities, different practices, different traditions, if we unravel it, open it, we actually get the deep philosophy. The philosophy or the message that is meant to convey. But very few can tune into the philosophy directly. One needs to be intellectual, one needs to be interested, one needs to seek, inquire, go deeper. But the majority of people are devotional. So it is much easier to follow a ritual, to follow a practice, to follow a tradition, to listen to stories. That is, and you remember the stories because they're interesting. But perhaps the story is meant to convey a deeper truth, a deeper philosophy. So what it does is these practices and traditions get passed generation to generation. So therefore, it maintains religion. But you don't really get the benefit until one day, one person says, why? Why do we light a candle in the church? Why do we remove a hat when we go into a place of worship? Why do we remove our footwear before we enter a temple? Why does Ganesha, the elephant god, why does he have an elephant head? And you'd be surprised how few people ask. In India, they break coconuts when they have prayers. Objectively speaking, a very strange practice. It's like, what do you have against coconuts? He said, no, after the prayer, we're having coconut chutney, so it made sense to break the coconut. There's a beautiful symbolism of the coconut, how it represents the personality with its different layers, and how inside is the self, the truth. So by breaking the coconut, by removing the outer aspect of it, it shows a way of removing our desires and getting to the core of our personality. It's got a beautiful symbolism, but you only access it if you ask about it. Therefore, rituals are also important because they maintain the spirit of religion. And when people are ready, they can delve into it and they can find the truth. Ganesha has an elephant head to represent a person of wisdom, has so much wisdom. But how do you put that pictorially? So you take the animal, the mammal with the largest head representing wisdom, and you put it on a human body. And what does this person travel with? He travels on a rat. Nobody questions the absurdity of this. But if one does question, why? Elephant head on a person traveling on a rat. Because a rat represents greed. It is the one animal that hoards so much and forgets where it has kept things. So when a person rides on the rat, what it means that a person of wisdom has conquered greed. The desire, the greed no longer rides him. He rides the desire. He's in control. He is perfectly self-controlled. Beautiful symbolism. You don't get it unless you go into the ritual. And the last one, what about idols? When the truth, the pure consciousness, the self, has no form, is not manifest, what is the point then of idols? If it is omnipresent, all-pervading, why then do we need idols? Exactly because we cannot see it, we cannot conceive it. So where do you direct your thoughts? We don't know that unmanifest reality. So to help us conceive of that unmanifest reality, of self-realization, we don't know what that is yet. We don't have a form for it. We don't have a peg for our thoughts to go towards. So what do? We put an idol to help us conceive the ideal, which is God, truth, reality. So the idol is only a symbol of the ideal. The idol only represents God. It is not God. It's a representation. So all the different idols that we see in India or throughout the world, could be the cross or the crescent moon, all these different idols are only symbols of the absolute reality. And if that idol helps take your thoughts towards the higher, it's doing its purpose. But let us not get stuck on the idol. The idol is only meant to help us reach the ideal. But if you get stuck on the idol, you miss the ideal. Example, marriage is the ideal. What is the symbol of marriage? Because that's an abstract idea. The symbol of marriage is wedding ring. Mangal Sutra. In India, ladies wear a particular necklace. It's a symbol of marriage. Now, what are people doing? They are polishing the ring and abusing the partner. Scolding and fighting with the partner. But the ring is beautiful. The necklace is gorgeous. It is a symbol of the marriage. Now, if you don't take care of the essential, what is the point of the non-essential? Or a person might say, oh, I lost my wedding ring. That doesn't mean you have to find a new partner. It is only a representation of the union between you and your partner. And what are anniversaries, birthdays? Anniversaries and birthdays are reminders, at least once a year, treat your partner nicely. Don't fight, at least for this one day. And people sometimes are watching the clock. Oh, great, it's midnight. We can argue again. What is important is the ideal. And the idol or these reminders, prayers, rituals only help us conceive and move closer towards the ideal. So that is the significance of prayers, rituals, and idols. They have a part to play. So we should not discard them. But if you are able to latch on to the essentials, to think about the ideal, then you don't need the aids. You don't need the reminders. But if you do, use them. So that is our question for the week. And the last part, just to tie up our quality of Daksha. If you understand that God self is within you, when you do something, you do it to the best of your ability because you are honoring yourself. And that makes the action perfectly self-sufficient. And that is the height of spirituality. We take up your questions. So feel free to unmute. I'll also have a look at the chat box.
Sudhakar, some suggest that you should do what you love, but if I'm not mistaken, you're trying to tell us that we should love whatever we're doing, or with dignity and grace, or whatever is presented to us, correct?
Correct. Love what we do is a mindset. It is approaching every activity and dedicating that activity to your evolution. So it becomes an act of love, it becomes an act of worship. But does that mean you go and choose activities that are very difficult? No, we don't need to make life more difficult, more challenging. There are enough challenges in store for us. Therefore, when we choose a field of activity, let us choose a field of activity that is in line with our nature, that we love, that we're interested in. So for Michelangelo, choose painting. For Shakespeare, choose writing. For yourself, it could be marketing. It could be consultancy. Because randomly now, Sudhakar gets into tennis. Yes, I can make that activity spiritual, but why not go with what my nature is, to share ideas? So both are true, Dana. Love what you do and make sure you love everything that you do. So do what you love and love everything that you do.
Sometimes we're presented with things that we don't enjoy, but they're responsibilities, and this is the challenge, to accept them and to act with integrity and grace. And this is the challenge for me.
Correct. So you're choosing it as your duty, as your responsibility. This is one of the goals in my life, to do this well. So I'm going to do it well. If I decide to take care of an ailing parent, it may not be in my nature, but I've decided to do it. I'm going to do it well. I'm going to study it. I'm going to execute it well. I'm not going to grumble because I'm choosing to do it. So you turn it from being a victim, grumbling and complaining, you turn it into something that helps you evolve.
Thank you.
Paresh, is Daksha similar to Kaushalam in the Bhagavad Gita 2 verse 50? Yes, in a sense that we should go slowly, carefully. That's the idea behind it. Slowly, it doesn't mean doing things at a very slow pace. It means thinking it out.
Deliberately.
Giving enough due thought to that particular activity. So that's that reverence, that grace. Yes. Sapna, do we need to consciously practice Daksha, or we get Daksha eventually as we walk the spiritual path? Great question, Sapna. Sapna, so it is both. as you evolve, you start seeing how an activity can be converted into worship. That is called karma yoga. So the more we understand the spiritual path, the more it becomes an effect. Whatever we do, we make it spiritual. But having heard this lecture, we can start practicing it. Which of my activities are definitely not Daksha? How can I do this better? It could be organizing my cupboard. It could be the way I have my desk, my calendar at work. I can see some room for Daksha. So what these do is, your morning study, when you are with your e-learning or you are with the books or you're going through these lectures, your morning study gives you the overall treatment. But when we discuss these qualities, they give us the specifics. So the overall treatment is going to take care of everything. But it's also nice to give some topical treatment directly at those particular areas. And that's what we are covering here. So it's both the cause and effect.
Thank you.
Sonia, which shloka is Daksha referred in? So Sonia, it is in chapter 12, and I think it is verse 15 or 16. So I can confirm that.
16.
16, thank you. So chapter 12, verse
Thank
16.
you so much. Verse 16.
Lakshmi.
Thank you, thank you.
Pleasure. Can we be dexterous in many fields? Yes. Is Daksha for lifetime or short time only? So Daksha should become our way of being. If I choose an activity, I'm going to do it well. So it is an attitude. It is a reflection of your evolution. I find every action important because every action is an opportunity to worship God. So some people can find it in their art. I'm saying, let us try and find it in every activity that we do, starting with our work, moving it to our family, moving it to the most mundane activities. So it should be throughout our life. Mala. Mala is giving general appreciation for the class. Thank you, Mala. Okay. Any other questions? One last question. Yes, Radhika.
So, we do observe sometimes that in trying to do a job well or skillfully, sometimes it could happen at somebody else's cost, at the discomfort of someone else. Does that justify being skillful then?
So when we do an activity, the consideration or the skill in the activity is to take people's feelings into consideration. So you'd like to do an activity where it upsets as few people as possible. But at the same time, everyone is going to have an opinion on your activity. So you may not be able to cater to everybody. But as long as you've done your due diligence, it's not reckless, it is not insensitive, we cannot control the thoughts and the opinions of everyone. As long as you've done your part to be thoughtful, considerate, that is the extent of your duty. Now, each person, you take each person's feedback, each person will have a different point. Some person might give their feedback just based on how they are feeling that day. It has nothing to do with you. So you can't go beyond a point trying to appease people. So as long as you've done your aspect to not hurt, to not harm, or be insensitive, you're okay. So that's part of the consideration. Before we end the class, one announcement. Avani and myself are resuming our travels. At the moment, we've been in sometimes the connection has been interrupted, so apologies for that. But on our journeys coming up, and I know we've got probably about 15 countries, different people in our class from different regions. So just to let you know to the places that we're going, so you can connect with us, or if you'd like to organize an event, you're most welcome to. So we're in August. We're going to begin in Johannesburg and Durban. We have public lectures and some seminars in both of these cities. And from South Africa, we move to Brazil. So we have some sessions with YPO in Sao Paulo, and also a family evening with friends. Then we move to Ibitipoca, where we are doing a 4-day retreat. So this is a place about a couple of hours, Rio and Sao Paulo, beautiful. What they've done there is incredible. So even for those of you who are not able to make it, end of August, have a look. What a place. And it's an annual retreat, so maybe one year we can plan it. And then from Ibitipoca, we go to Rio. We have another seminar with YPO there. And then we move to the US. So Houston, we are doing a chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. We move to Washington, D.C. For a short visit. Hopefully some lectures in Washington, D.C. as well. Miami, we have a variety of lectures to schools, to a rugby community, to a marketing consultancy firm. Dubai, we'll have a session there. Prague, we are looking at a retreat for those who are advanced learners, but also some lectures with schools and universities. And then we move and finish our tour in Germany. In Hamburg, we have a public lecture. Berlin, we have a public lecture. And then mid-October, we're back in India. And in November, we will be resident in Ananda Spa. So Ananda Spa is a place where Avane and myself give lectures. So we will have daily lectures in this place where it's very convenient for us, because there, instead of us going to the world comes to us. So beautiful destination. For those of you who don't know about it, take a look. It is something special. So that's what the next few months we have lined up. For our Kenyans, we are looking at Nairobi first week in December. So let me know your thoughts. We still have to confirm. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sudhakar.
Keep well.